seems slightly inauspicious that South Africa's Industrial Policy Action Plan comes into effect today on April Fool's Day. It's been called overambitious, and by some, even unnecessary.
It's going to stifle the free market.
South Africa is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Government wants to grow the economy by between 5 and 6% a year, and it needs a competitive manufacturing sector to do so. Currently, 5.8 million South Africans don't have jobs. And President Jacob Zuma has made it clear that he wants to create jobs. The Industrial Policy Action Plan promises to do just that. In fact, 2.5 million direct and indirect jobs over the next decade. To achieve this, the action plan is focusing its attention and money on two highly labour-intensive industries, the clothing and textile and automotive industries. And these are two industries hard hit by a strong rand.
We actually need a 2.5% cut in interest rates for every 10% strength in the rand to actually neutralise the destructive impact rand strength is having on our export sector.
Both the textile and automotive industries are each being subsidised with 1.8 billion rand. But there is no real figure as to how much an industrial policy like this will ultimately cost. Research house Frost & Sullivan estimated that on average it takes around 1 million rand to create one new permanent middle-income job in South Africa. This means it will take roughly 880 billion rand to create the 800,000 direct jobs over the next 10 years. The Department of Trade and Industry will therefore have to source some serious additional funding, which it says will come from development finance institutions like the Industrial Development Corporation. The problem is, compared to South Africa's developing country counterparts like Brazil and India, the IDC's funding is expensive, and analysts have even questioned the sustainability of its funding capacity.
The IDC have last received money from the government in 1956, and we have never capitalized that organization. And I think it is important that we need to provide some business support.
Funding is a major hurdle to the success of the plan, but some textile players are already saying that their allotted 1.8 billion rand won't be enough to save the industry.
The amount that we're looking at is in the region of sort of 400 million a year. You probably need 10 times that.
The policy's success will depend on the effectiveness of its implementation. The plan aims to address the issue of improved competition and governance. Currently, textile industry players estimate that almost half of imported finished textile goods are done so illegally and are under-invoiced. Getting that under control could mean a significant reversal of fortunes for this industry.
The under-invoiced goods are an absolutely massive threat. If those are TextFed's figures of about 50%. If you assume even that we stopped it by half and we won back even half of that, you're talking a 10-15% growth in the industry.
In the past, the textile industry has got a bad reputation for being unproductive and uncompetitive compared to its eastern neighbours. But what makes the difference is that Asian textile producers are heavily subsidised and have lower input costs.
The reality is that as long as somebody out there, and whether it's a China or a Pakistan or an India or whoever it is prepared to subsidize their industries, and they will do so ongoingly because they have the same issue of us creating employment for people that don't have other spaces in the economy, we're going to have to subsidize here, and that's a difficulty.
When it comes to input costs, there is no relief in sight for South African manufacturers. And along with the slew of petrol and power increases which come into effect in April, the already high cost of doing business is unlikely to be brought down.
Our electricity demand clearly outstrips electricity supply. We just do not have enough power stations to provide the needs for industry in South Africa.
The impact of the industrial policy will be felt not only in South Africa, but also in neighbouring Southern African Custom Union members. And their silence in the construction of this plan is deafening.
The Southern African Customs Union Agreement states that we are supposed to develop a common industrial policy with our neighbours, Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho, Swaziland. It doesn't really look like this policy has taken their circumstances and their considerations into account, and I doubt very much whether these countries were actually consulted in the drafting of the plan.
While the general consensus is that the Industrial Policy Action Plan is necessary for South Africa's growth, issues remain as to the funding, implementation, real skills development, and the role of the Economic Development Department,